Deathwatch are the worst performing faction in 40k competitive play right now. This is according to the Goonhammer stats. Games Workshop tracks it a bit differently, and it looks like Games Workshop includes mirror matches. So when the very few Deathwatch players end up at the bottom tables facing each other, that brings up the win rate towards 50%, as there is a guaranteed win to offset all the other losses. That is how it appears, and I would be more willing to trust the tournament players on how good the army is, rather than the Games Workshop stats saying, oh, it's pretty good, oh, it's not great, but it's about as good as Astra Militarum. Well, we're not seeing Astra Militarum players suddenly disappear from the tournament scene, but we are seeing close to 0 players turn up with Deathwatch armies. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about them being the worst performing faction. That's where the stats come from. But we're going to play Deathwatch. So there's 2 ways to think about Deathwatch. Having Deathwatch units in a regular Space Marine army, or you can have the Black Spear Task Force. Technically, any chapter can use the Black Spear Task Force, it just stops certain units being taken, and you can't have something like a Space Wolf unit, or Marneus Calgar, because they have different chapter keywords compared to Deathwatch, which is the only one you can take as a keyword. But if you have just generic Space Marine units, they can go into Black Spear Task Force if you so wished. For the Deathwatch, I recommend the Gladius Task Force. Deathwatch are mostly a short-range army, so being able to advance and charge, and advance and shoot, without having to spend command points, and across the whole army, those are really good abilities that will suit you. The Tactical Doctrine is also a great counter to Orcs and World Eaters and other close combat armies. Although we're thinking more Orcs because they're an alien, in theory we should be fighting aliens a lot. When you can fall back across the entire army, and still shoot, and still charge, hordes of little enemies are not able to tie you up. The Raven Guard style Vanguard detachment is also very good for enhancements. Mainly the blade driven deep so you can have a unit infiltrate, thus getting our short range units much closer to the enemy straight away. And using a detachment from the Space Marine Codex means there are no restrictions on the units that you can take. So you can have a tactical squad in there if you want. They're not performing great right now, but tradition, they're a cool unit. And this could also represent the Deathwatch supporting an allied Space Marine force, so you don't need to pay for black spray paint and the shoulder pad add-on sprue. At least for the purposes of this video, we'll be talking about a very Deathwatch unit heavy army and being Deathwatch themed, otherwise we're just talking about a full analysis of Codex Space Marines, and there are way too many units for me to spend anything less than 4 hours on that, and because of the roster size, I haven't even used half of them. But we're looking a lot at the kill teams and the units that come in the Deathwatch Index. Basically, what is good, and what you should choose to have as their regular Marine variant. With all the talk of the Deathwatch doing badly and the different ways that the kill teams are not up to scratch, it may start to sound negative, but remember, I am now a Deathwatch player. I chose this army knowing what 10th edition is like, and knowing what the Index is like and the Space Marine Codex. So I am not some person passing through being derisive about an army that isn't mine. That would be Space Wolves. Though I guess I technically do now own 1 Space Wolf model. But you get into Deathwatch because you want a hyper elite army that can kill any type of alien the galaxy throws at you. Most of the factions out there are aliens. This is good. But most players use variations of Space Marines or Chaos factions. This is bad for us on the tabletop. Shout out to Alex in the Discord for their wonderfully painted Emperor's Children army and incredible support for the channel. But with the last 2 editions, we are having Necrons and Tyranids as the starter armies, so there are a lot more people playing their factions. This is good. Right now the Necrons are super powerful in competitive games and Deathwatch are very much not. So that is bad. Tyranids are okay, but I'm used to armies that don't get support or updates. I main Sisters of Battle, which had no physical codex between 3rd edition and 8th edition. And I also played Genestealer Cult, which had rules in 2nd edition and then nothing until 7th edition. I would wonder why I do this to myself, but I just love the little guys, the ones that don't get much support. The rules for Deathwatch and the composition of their kill teams and their weapons and the rules for them and how they work, they change so often. Usually multiple times per edition. For months in 10th edition, after the Space Marine Codex was released, we couldn't add characters to our units because of a rules oversight. So that was fun. So you don't get into Deathwatch because you want a well-supported army. You get into Deathwatch because you can't decide which chapter you want to play and keep finding cool ones, and Deathwatch is the solution, as then you can have one of them, two of them, and one I made up myself. And you can just take inspiration for a chapter from anywhere and make it part of your army without having to commit to that paint scheme across an entire army. So let's look at the units. The Deathwatch Veterans are about the only kill team that you want as a unit of 5, or that you should consider as a unit of 5. If you know you are going to be facing aliens, this is very much a cool unit. You get full rerolls against all alien factions, which here is stated as anything that isn't Imperium or Chaos. So that also works against unaligned things. We can hit barricades better than anyone else. The unit has some very cool weapon choices, like a lot of weapons. And the box set, which comes with 5 models, has more than enough weapons for twice as many models. There's the Long Vigil ranged weapon, which is the same stats as other factions' combi bolters. It only hits on a 4+. Most of the models would have to give up their power sword or Long Vigil melee weapon and their bolt gun to get one, but the Sergeant doesn't have to. So the Sergeant having a combi weapon, Long Vigil ranged weapon, and a Xenophase blade is entirely an option, and probably the best option for the Sergeant. So that's how the model is posed here at the top. There is no longer a difference between a combi melter and a combi plasma, so it's your personal preference on piece. At least for this current time, in this current edition. And if you don't like the idea of a Xenophase blade because you hate being a radical, then you could call it a Blessed Power Sword and use a power sword. Just make it look a bit cooler. You also get parts to have a model with a shotgun. The shotgun can be anything you want, as it no longer has its own rules. Just pick something appropriate when you build your list. Is it a Long Vigil ranged weapon doing devastating wounds? Is it a bolt gun and the melee weapon that they have on their back is the Long Vigil melee weapon? Is it a frag cannon? That kind of suits the look of a shotgun. And the shotguns can still be used in Kill Team, if you have the compendium. The Deathwatch Thunderhammer is very powerful, as it is strength 10, which is far higher than you see on a lot of other weapons. Remember that against vehicles, a power fist these days is wounding vehicles on a 5+. But for simplicity at least, a lot of the other weapon options that the Deathwatch unit had from previous editions has been stripped out. You could give them pretty much anything. Lightning claws, power fists, heavy bolters instead of the Infernus heavy bolter, but now we're limited to what is generally considered a Long Vigil melee weapon. The regular bolt guns are not bad. 2 shots all the time at 24 inches. And if you're using the special ammunition of the Black Spear Task Force, you'll want quite a few bolters. A shield is useful in case you're against lots of enemies that have AP -2, but just from the 5-man box, you'll probably want a Sergeant with a Long Vigil ranged weapon, a Xenophase blade, 2 Marines with the Deathwatch Thunderhammer, 1 Marine with the frag cannon, and 1 Marine with the Infernus heavy bolter. All of that can be made from the box. The rules allow you to take 2 frag cannons or 2 Infernus heavy bolters, but just going from the box, 1 Infernus heavy bolter and 1 frag cannon. I would try and decide if you're having the unit kitted out more for shooting or for combat, and if that shooting is going to focus on the bolt guns. Having lots of Long Vigil melee weapons is a good idea, and then you still have the bolt gun, so a regular guy with a bolt gun and Long Vigil melee weapon, I'm just going to call it a power sword from now on for convenience, is really good if you want to get close to the enemy and then start stabbing them. And the Deathwatch Thunderhammers can come into use then, whereas they can't if you're focusing more on shooting. If you're having a squad that's more focused on the shooting, several of the Long Vigil range weapons can be good, but remember you lose your power sword. You could then combo them with a Razorback, so that they disembark from the Razorback and then they're re-rolling their wounds, and on a 4+, that's a devastating wound. The issue then is you're nearly doubling the points of the unit to include that Razorback. If you're starting a Deathwatch army, having this unit is a really good place to start. Buying this box will help. For every box of 5 you buy, you get 18 shoulder pads representing various chapters, including the Black Shield, which isn't really a special thing in the rules anymore, but it represents a traitor marine coming back to the Imperium, or a member of a destroyed chapter, or the last of a loyalist group of a chapter that's turned renegade, and they join the Deathwatch to hide their past shame. The other boxes for the Deathwatch, including the Deathwatch Combat Patrol, doesn't come with any special shoulder pads. Just transfer sheets if you're lucky. So if you want to represent all the chapters and have nice stylized shoulder pads, this is the box to start with. Let's talk about more mixed and weird kill teams. So we have the Proteus Kill Team, which is based off the Deathwatch Veteran Kill Team, except you don't get a sergeant. So there's no Xenophase blade mixed with a combi weapon, which is a long vigil ranged weapon. But sometimes I say combi weapon. For this squad, I would definitely consider having one of your veterans with a shield, at least one. But there is really only one way to run this unit. You have them as a squad of 10. If they're a squad of 5, you are paying 180 points to get the same 5 people as you could pay 110 points for. You just swap out the special rule and you lose the sergeant. And the special rule is not better. +1 to hit is not going to help you compared to rerolled hit rolls of 1 or just rerolling all hit rolls when attacking aliens and things that are unaligned. So you have a squad of 10 and you fill it with Terminators. 4 Terminators, 5 Deathwatch Veterans, and a bike. Now you could have 2 bikes if you want instead of one of the Terminators, but you're getting your money's worth, and you really need to try and get your money's worth with these kill teams by having the max number of Terminators. Definitely do not have the Veterans with jump packs. Their equipment is bad. It is a power sword, nothing else. No weapon options, just a power sword. Or equivalent, like a pair of lightning claws, but they don't act as a pair of lightning claws, or a thunderhammer, but it doesn't act as a thunderhammer. Don't have them. And the reason we have 4 Terminators and a bike is because of the kill team rule. In the general rules, when you have a unit with mixed toughness, you use the highest toughness to decide what the toughness of the unit is for enemies shooting at you. Gretchen are an exception. They use their toughness 2, not the herder's toughness 5, and the kill teams are another exception in the rules. You take the toughness of the majority of the unit, and if it's a tie, then you take the highest one. So having 4 Terminators at toughness 5, and a bike at toughness 5, and 5 veterans at toughness 4, now we're equal toughness, so you get targeted at toughness 5. When you're taking casualties, take off the veterans, generally. So you never want to run a Proteus Kill Team as just a unit of 5, they are costed for a unit of 10 and using exploits. All of the exploits. Because of the different profiles going on in the unit, you can exploit damage and damage allocation to your advantage, and the unit can take far more damage than it should be able to. So we have a toughness of 5, which is great. Attacks that are doing high damage, like damage 3, damage 4, damage d6 plus whatever, you put them on a regular kill team veteran, not on the Terminators. If you're being hit by a damage 2 weapon, put that on the bike or the Terminators because they have 3 wounds each, and so it'll take 2 of those shots to take out one of the models. If you're hit by something with very high armor penetration, the Terminators have a 4+ save, and if you put your Deathwatch veteran with a shield, they have the 4+ invulnerable save as well. So high armor penetration attacks can be taken on the shield man. And all of this is assuming that there isn't a model in the squad already wounded. Then you need to keep allocating wounds to them until they die, then you can move on to something more exploitable. So you have to learn how to do that, otherwise this Proteus Kill Team is not going to be worth its points. They already cost more than 5 Terminators and 5 Kill Team veterans. You are absolutely paying for the shenanigans, so please, if you cannot take this unit to have a toughness of 5, don't include it in your army. If you add in a character to the squad, that will lower the toughness of it. As far as I can tell from the kill team rule, it isn't about the toughness of the bodyguard unit, it's about the toughness of the unit. And once a character is attached to a unit, that is a unit in total, so it being 11 models. The characters you can attach are all going to have a toughness of 4, meaning you would have 6 models with toughness 4, 5 models with toughness 5, so when targeting the squad, enemies will be rolling against their toughness 4. This is why it's important to always have more Terminators and bikes alive than Deathwatch veterans. Keeps the toughness up. So no characters in this squad. But if there is ever an enhancement or ability that improves the toughness of a character, I would put that on an apothecary and put them in the squad, because then, with all our shenanigans we're doing, we've got a squad that's going to stay alive and we can be resurrecting the best models. It's a shame there is no such enhancement. Until... So now we can have an apothecary that's toughness 5, put them in the unit, and the toughness of the unit does not degrade. You can also then double it up with a captain, because the apothecary rule allows them to join a unit that also has a captain. And the captain, they're going to be toughness 4, but that's okay. We've got 6 models of toughness 4, 6 models of toughness 5. We are staying at toughness 5. And together, we are hitting with the force of 1 million trucks that have the toughness of 1,000 land raiders. However, this enhancement, this upgrade, is in the new Pariah Nexus Crusade book, so it is there for Crusade players to enjoy, but not for casual match players or tournament games. That's unfortunate. So if you're playing in those styles, which is the vast majority of games, no characters please. The unit has a really good special rule. The Proteus Doctrines mean you add 1 to hit rolls if you're targeting an enemy that is not below half strength. So if they're on half strength, you still get the bonus. If they're a full strength squad, you get the bonus. If they're slightly damaged, you get the bonus. If they're almost dead and going to be wiped out by anything, oh no, I don't get the bonus. It's a minor thing. Pretty much always you are getting the +1 to hit. And remember that if you're fighting an attached unit and you wipe out the bodyguard, then that character is now back to being a starting strength of 1 at full health. That's a whole new unit that you can get +1 to hit against. This squad is definitely going to want the Deathwatch Thunderhammers, because they are almost certainly going to be hitting on a 3+ now. And there's more. You can have 4 Deathwatch Thunderhammers in this unit of 10, even though there are only 5 Deathwatch Veterans in the squad. And just because the box comes with 2 hammers for a squad of 5. The ruling is you can have 2 Deathwatch Thunderhammers for every 5 models in the squad, not for every 5 Deathwatch Veteran models. So I would do that. This is going to be a really good close combat unit, but it also has quite a bit of shooting. Also consider that the combi weapons are now hitting on a 3+, putting them back to a normal kind of shooting profile for a Space Marine. But having 4 Deathwatch Thunderhammers and a Deathwatch Veteran with a shield and a sword is a good idea. The Terminators in the squad, 3 of them can have special weapons. So if you're building this squad out of the new and pretty Terminator box set, there is 1 assault cannon, there is 1 missile launcher, and there is 1 heavy flamer. That is okay, that will work. If you have 1, I would swap the heavy flamer for a Dark Angel's plasma cannon. The current meta is to take 3 missiles. Then you still get the storm bolters as well. That works with the Deathwatch special ammunition stratagems, if you're thinking of a shooting unit. It's personal preference, but they're probably the best. They work against vehicles, and they work well against infantry hordes. This kill team is expensive, so it wants to be taking on all comers. Chain Fists are a good choice for the Deathwatch Terminators in this squad, because against the majority of enemy units that are not below half strength, you're going to be getting +1 to hit, hitting on a 3+. And you have anti-vehicle. Power Fists normally need 5s to wound vehicles. This is wounding them on a 3+. For the 4th Terminator, I recommend Lightning Claws. It blends infantry really well, and the rerolls to wound are not bad against vehicles. So we have a lot of things in this squad. It's versatile, it can take out light infantry, heavy infantry, vehicles, and monsters. If you want even more support for this squad to make it even better, it goes well with a friendly Dreadnought nearby to reroll hit rolls of 1, and provide anti-tank support from nearby. It is unfortunate that because of the points as they are, 180 for 5, 360 for 10, you can't have what you think is fun. So you can't take a couple of Terminators because you have them and they're nice, made out of the characters from the Leviathan box set, throwing in a couple of Infernus Marines and we'll just pretend that they're having long vigil range weapons. It's not really going to be worth it, because you have to use toughness shenanigans and damage allocation exploits. There is also a movement exploit to get an extra 5 inches on your charge that I will show off shortly. Deathwatch is not a great beginner army, because of all of these exploits you need to do to make the army work. Otherwise, Space Marines are a great beginner army. Easy to paint, cheap to buy, easy to understand, and pretty forgiving. Deathwatch are not. So we'll move on to Kill Team Cassius. Kill Team Cassius is basically a Proteus Kill Team with 1 bike, 1 Terminator, 2 veterans with the jump packs, and you also get a free sort of librarian. And it's led by a chaplain, Cassius. If you wanted, this unit of 11 can be your warlord. It's a character. As it is basically a Proteus Kill Team, you can still do the Proteus Kill Team damage exploits and wound exploits. If you're hit by damage 2, put it on the bike or the Terminator. If you're hit by something with high AP, put it on the Terminator. Or you could put the damage on Cassius. The Chaplain has 4 wounds and a 4+ invulnerable save, though if he dies you will lose the devastating wounds ability. This is because of another exploit around attached units. This is not an attached unit. This is a character unit. So we can put damage on any model in the squad, whereas all of the rules about attached units are when you have a character bought separately added to another unit. That becomes the bodyguard and the character, together the attached unit. And this is not, so you absolutely can put damage on Cassius if you wish. But there's yet another exploit that you can and must use as a Deathwatch player. The unit also has Deep Strike inbuilt, so if you're not taking the Black Spear Task Force, which has a stratagem that lets you teleport, here's a unit that can Deep Strike right from the start and get into the enemy backfield. So this squad is a decent all-rounder with its points being valued towards being a very cheap Proteus Kill Team that's actually worth its value. If you add up all the individual parts, including Cassius, then it is a point saving. It is a shame that because it's an epic hero, you can only take one of the unit. In a smaller game, this is your we have Proteus Kill Team at home. In bigger games, it can deep strike the enemy backline regardless of which detachment you are using and mess up the enemy. Ah yes, and we have movement shenanigans. So I'll explain the movement exploits that you can do with Kill Team Cassius and with the Proteus Kill Team. So you have your unit laid out, and I'm using Kill Team Cassius in this example. The blue models are the veterans with jump packs, the large circle is the Terminator, the oblong is the bike. You move up the models in the unit, apart from those ones. The veterans with jump packs go up in the front, and as they're next to each other, they can provide coherency for the bike, which is now in range of 2 friends. So this is an absolutely legal unit coherency. In a Proteus Kill Team, you could have 2 bikes doing this side by side. Remember, we don't want veterans with jump packs in a Proteus Kill Team, so the Proteus Kill Team will probably end up 2 inches further back from the enemy compared to Kill Team Cassius. But just by doing this, we have made a charge against the enemy so much easier. I think you'll be able to remember this shape right here. Yeah? Yeah, I think you'll be able to remember it. You were drawing it on the edge of your school books for years, all leading up to this moment when you learnt this tactic. So just by doing this, you can get an extra 5 or 6 inches on your charge. And being able to go in with a bonus 5 or 6 inches is pretty good. People will tell you that. This bike exploit can also be done with the Fortis Kill Team, but the Fortis Kill Team is not likely to want to charge. Unlike Kill Team Cassius and the Proteus Kill Team, which have a lot of powerful utility in close combat. The Fortis Kill Team is your first Primaris Kill Team, starting on 5 intercessors. But remember to never have this as a unit of 5. You would be paying so many points more to get exactly the same models. And this is just such a weird kill team. It's not every model that's in Tacticus armor, so you don't get Infernus Marines, you don't get Desolation Marines, you don't get Jump Intercessors at this time. You can have 1 or 2 Outriders, which is okay, but it isn't enough to be doing Toughness shenanigans as you can do with the Proteus Kill Team. You can take Intercessors with Plasma Incinerators, and having them in a squad of 10 will mean that you have some protection on your Plasma Men compared to just having them in a squad by themselves. But 5 Fortis Kill Team members costs the same points as 5 Deathwatch Veterans. And so even a unit of 10 Fortis Kill Team members in any combination is costing the same as 10 Deathwatch Veterans, and they get better equipment and a better special rule. And that's costing you what, 5-10 points? The Deathwatch Veterans are rerolling hit rolls of 1, or they're rerolling all hits. The Fortis Kill Team gets +1 to hit if the enemy is below half strength. They're meant to be the opposite to the Proteus Kill Team. Proteus Kill Team goes in hard, smashes the enemy, and leaves the Fortis Kill Teams to tidy up. Not for these points they're not, and at +1 to hit against something that's nearly dead anyway, you're not getting a lot of a bonus. So I don't recommend the Fortis Kill Team. And think about all of the different models that go into the Fortis Kill Team. They're losing their special rules. You don't get the special rules of the models that go into them. They become a whole new unit, the Fortis Kill Team, and this is their special rule, the Fortis Doctrines. So having them separately, intercessors, they have sticky objectives. In smaller games, like at 1,000 points, it means that you don't need to worry about splitting up your army for each objective. You can tag one and then keep fighting. The Marines with plasma incinerators, if they're by themselves, sure, they won't have ablative intercessors in the way, but they can shoot on death. And if you add an apothecary to the unit, good choice, then the model may shoot, die from overcharging, shoot again, then come back next turn as the apothecary revives them, only for them to shoot again, die from overcharging, and shoot again on death. You don't get that in the Fortis Kill Team. Even if they had the special rule of the Assault Intercessors, being able to reroll wound rolls of 1, or all wound rolls if the enemy is on an objective. That would be better than +1 to hit when the enemy is nearly dead anyway. In the January 2024 Points and Balance Dataset update, Intercessors and Assault Intercessors just got cheaper in the Space Marine Army, but the Deathwatch Kill Team did not get cheaper. Also, please could you note the clear mistake, uncorrected, on the chainswords. They are hitting on a 4+ in a Fortis Kill Team. They hit on a 3+ everywhere else. And this isn't quite like the Indomitor Kill Team, where there's an aggressor who hits on a 4+ and they still have them hitting on a 4+, which is how they were at the start of the index in the Space Marine index. But now in the Space Marine Codex, aggressors have gone to 3+. Hasn't been changed in the Indomitor Kill Team. Games Workshop does not support Deathwatch. I do. A bit. Not as much as Genestealer Cult and Battle Sisters, but I support the Deathwatch. If you then want to support me, I have a Ko-fi, and that's where you can leave one-off tips with a message about what content you like, so that I know what I should make more of. Or you can choose to support me long-term, through all of the different armies I talk about. But here is my recommendation for what to have instead of the Fortis Kill Team. You could just have 10 intercessors with bolt rifles. They've got assault, they've got heavy, they've got sticky objectives. They are very versatile, and they can make a better use of special ammunition. I know that the special ammunition stratagems work on 2 kill teams or 1 other Space Marine unit, but having 10 models firing 2 shots each, wounding on a 2+ with AP -1 is good. So if you have the Deathwatch Combat Patrol, as it's known, I don't think that's a good place to start with Deathwatch, but it would be okay to use the 10 intercessors. Let's be stealthy and stab people. Oh, there is context for that line. The Spectrus Kill Team. You may want to include 2 units of these in the Vanguard detachment, that's the Raven Guard style detachment, as they have the Phobos keyword. But if you're taking that detachment, then you can also have scout squads, even as a Deathwatch player, because the restriction that stops you from having scouts is only in the Black Spear detachment. It's not a restriction for all Deathwatch armies. So the Spectrus Kill Team can get around the board with their unit special rule, but at the same time, picking the Vanguard detachment or the Black Spear Task Force detachment also gives you ways to move off the board and come back on the next turn. The Spectrus Kill Team has Infiltrate, so you can delay the enemy as being a buffer to stop them from moving up the board so soon, but you could also just have the Infiltrator Squad. They can also do that. And if you have the Infiltrator Squad, you also get the Omni Scrambler rule. That can let you keep your home base safe from enemy deep strike. That is quite a big area denial, because it's not just coming from a model with an Omni Scrambler, it is coming from the whole unit. So if you string them out, that's about a 39-inch wide area of denial. You do get the war gear abilities of the Infiltrator Squad in the Spectrus Kill Team, so regaining a command point on a 5+ if you spend it on the unit, and the unit has a 6+ Feel No Pain. If you wanted a unit out in the field, paying 5 extra points to change 5 Infiltrators into a 5-man Spectrus Kill Team to gain Scout but lose Omni Scrambler, it's okay. If you are misplaced or the enemy gets the first turn and is coming for your squad, you could scout out of the way. A little bit. For the Spectrus Kill Team, I don't see the benefit of adding in cursor models. You can't get the Haywire Mine, and unlike in 9th edition, you can't plant bombs on objectives. Unless you're in the Vanguard detachment, then you can do that as a stratagem, which also gives the objective sticky so it can be yours. The Spectrus Kill Team can add in 2 Eliminators. If you do so, don't take the Bolt Carbine. You don't get the special rule of it that you would if you were in the Eliminator Squad. There is no extra movement from having this gun. You would want the Bolt Sniper Rifle or the Las Fusel. The squad could also add up to 4 Reavers who have precision shots, and that can go well with a pair of Eliminators and the 5 Infiltrators. But I don't think this kill team knows exactly what it wants to do. It can be up close with Infiltrate and Scout, that suits the Reavers, but it doesn't suit the Eliminators or other members of the squad. It can have a lot of precision, so it is not the worst kill team if you want to be assassinating characters, but much like the other Primaris kill teams, I think it works better to split it up and use them as separate units, 5 Incursors, 5 Infiltrators, 3 Eliminators, 5 Reavers, using the Space Marine unit cards instead. So yes, that is also what I think of the Fatman kill team, the Indomitor kill team. Heavy Intercessors just got cheaper, so taking just Heavy Intercessors is fine. The Indomitor kill team did not get cheaper in the January 2024 points change. And the Aggressors, taken separately, their Power Fists hit on a 3+. In the Indomitor kill team, they hit on a 4+. Yes, this unit is very tough, but not shenanigan tough like we are with the Proteus Kill Team. They are much cheaper than the Proteus Kill Team, but we're not getting any movement shenanigans or save shenanigans because there is no invulnerable save in this unit. There is no 2+ save. They all have the same profile. There's no bikes. And you can only get a little bit further up if you're using the jump pack models, which are the Inceptors. So though this unit is a very tough Gravis unit, for the points and the rules and the stats debuff, having a separate unit of Heavy Intercessors and Aggressors is gonna be better. The Heavy Intercessor squad is very tough. They have a special rule that gives them +1 to their save if they're on an objective and targeted by damage 1 weapons. You know, the majority of weapons. This isn't like Imperial Guard squads that get +1 to their save by the benefit of cover. This is just a flat +1 to the save. So if they were in cover as well and hit by something with AP -2, they're still saving on a 3+. And for 100 points, you are getting 15 wounds at toughness 6. This is a brick. They're very good for holding the backfield or midfield objectives. You don't need to add a character to them. That is just a bunch of points wasted on a unit whose job is to be a Snorlax and sit in front of the enemy. Alternatively, you would use Desolation Marines that stay on the home objective and still fire indirectly. Or if you want to be cheap, Inquisitorial Agents. You could have the 5 Infiltrators on the home base to stop enemy deep strike, or if there's no enemy deep strike, then 5 Intercessors with sticky objectives is good. So the Indomitor Kill Team, it's tough, but their special rule, it is such a mismatch. We've established that they're hard to kill, but then they get bonuses when members of the squad have died. And taking the Indomitor Kill Team, you lose all of the good special rules. The Aggressors getting improved armor penetration, the Eradicators getting to reroll wounds and damage against vehicles and monsters. And they are not going to be able to fire if you're moving up the board with Heavy Intercessors whose weapons have an Assault and Heavy selector. With Assault weapons, you can still advance and shoot, but only those Assault weapons. And if the Inceptors can't drop within 3 inches of an enemy to complete secondary objectives or take the enemy home objective, they lose their purpose. Being a little bit fast in a squad that's otherwise moving 5 inches isn't going to help. Now the points for this squad are not awful. The Indomitor Kill Team is much cheaper than the Proteus Kill Team. But for all of the debuffs you get, I think it's better to keep them separate. Primaris units go their own way. The Deathwatch Terminator Squad. This is the Deathwatch's own version of the Terminator Squad. To get your points worth, you must max out on special weapons. Have 3 Cyclone missile launchers. Or if you've bought the box set which comes with 5 Terminators, then sure, have a heavy flamer, have an assault cannon, have 1 Cyclone missile launcher because that's what you get in the box. And I would also have at least 2 Chain Fists. Of the other 2 models, one of them should have a shield, so they're coming from the Assault Terminators, because then you can take a damage 3 shot and keep coming. Having the other one with Lightning Claws or another shield, that's a good choice because the Lightning Claws blend infantry wonderfully, and the shield gives you another model where you can assign a damage 3 attack, and still fail the save, and still keep surviving. If you're taking a generic Space Marine detachment and a generic Space Marine list, having the Deathwatch Terminator Squad is better than a regular Terminator Squad. So this applies to all of you regular Space Marine players as well. If you just have a Space Marine army with no chapter keywords, no Manius Calgard, no Ragnar Blackmane, just generic, you can still take a Deathwatch Terminator Squad and then your army becomes Deathwatch. Just from having that one squad, because we have the Deathwatch keyword in the faction keywords. But that also relies on you having all of the special weapons and different things available. And if you're a Deathwatch player, having the Deathwatch Terminator Squad is going to work better in the generic Space Marine detachments, because in the Deathwatch Black Spear detachments, any 2 kill teams can be teleported across the battlefield. The Deathwatch Terminator Squad is not a kill team. They don't have the kill team keyword. So that's a stratagem better spent on the Proteus Kill Team. The Deathwatch Veteran Bike Squad, they're okay. They're probably going to get discontinued as the regular Space Marine bikes have been sent to Legend, and you can't buy the bike squad anymore in stores. If you're going to go for an army that is entirely Deathwatch themed, where they all have the Deathwatch keyword, these are the units that hold objectives, because they're cheap, they're quite tough, you can have an invulnerable save on the Sergeant, and if you need to get to another objective or a different part of the board to complete a secondary objective, their speed of 12 is really nice. So these are your support unit. There is the Corvus Blackstar. It is a unit that exists. That's about as polite as I can be about it. The rules for flyers change so much every edition, with the general ruling being it doesn't want to be like real life, where having air superiority is very important in war. The rules for flyers are there to make sure they don't overpower the tabletop. The Corvus Blackstar is a transport. It is also a sort of gunship, so it is supporting the units after it drops them. Good news is that now with the rules commentary, you can have the Corvus Blackstar come on from reserve and still drop your unit off in the same turn, disembarking from a transport, but there's not a lot of reason to take it when we have all of the different detachments available. In the Black Spear Task Force, the teleport stratagem is better. In the Raven Guard style Vanguard detachment, there is a stratagem that lets a unit disappear from the board and come on again next turn. That gets you around to where you want to be. In the Gladius Task Force, just coming on from reserves by itself is a lot cheaper. If you've bought it and think it's cool and want to do a drop insertion kill team, then you can. But flyers generally are not supported in this edition and have very high points. If we're trying to get our points value as much as possible out of a poor performing faction, then I would not recommend the Corvus Blackstar. Okay, let's look at characters that could lead our army. We've already mentioned Kill Team Cassius. That is a character. That can be your warlord. But we also have Watch Captain Artemis. I find that a regular captain, which we'll call a Watch Captain, is better. Watch Captain Artemis can't make battle tactics free, and a regular captain can make the Vanguard detachment stratagem to give precision on all of the models in your unit that will murder all of the enemy characters in an enemy unit. Or if you're using the Gladius detachment or the Black Spear Task Force detachment, the captain's ability to add 3 to their attacks and then use a stratagem that everyone has access to do an epic challenge, that will kill the majority of characters in attached units. So I use captains as assassins. Plus, you get your free battle tactic every battle round, which is especially useful for Armor of Contempt. Every detachment of Space Marines has Armor of Contempt. Otherwise, Watch Captain Artemis is okay, but you can't have him by himself. He'll just get shot. And because he's an epic hero, like a named character, you can only have one of him, and you can't give him enhancements. So you can't give him the Vanguard detachment enhancement that lets him have lone operative and stealth. Otherwise, having him running around burning stuff and stabbing people would be okay. He also has the ability to get back up when dead. His tactical insight is not providing a lot to a unit that a captain couldn't provide better. So we can use a stratagem if the stratagem has already been used by another unit. Okay, we can throw grenades twice in a turn. That's not bad. But being able to target a unit even while battle shocked, Space Marines have a pretty good leadership anyway. They're unlikely to be battle shocked. And for so few extra points, I would just go with a regular Watch Captain. If we're leading a larger force than a Watch Company, a Watch Master is great for a combat-focused Deathwatch Veteran team. A Watch Master is basically a captain with a bolt gun, that's what the profile is, and a power sword. Yeah, it matches up a lot with a regular captain. But the strategic knowledge that lets a unit shoot and declare a charge when it has advanced or fallen back. So being able to advance and charge, and fall back and shoot and charge, is really powerful. If you're not using the Gladius task force, this guy will put a unit where you want it to be. Just don't put him in a Proteus Kill Team because he will lower the toughness of the unit until a veteran dies, but if you want him in a Proteus Kill Team, it makes for a unit that's very fast despite some of the models moving 5 inches, because you are always going to be advancing this unit. If you wanted to use Blade Driven Deep to put a Proteus Kill Team really close to the enemy, and then advance and charge in the first turn, with the bike shenanigans, yeah, that works. It is a tactic that relies quite a bit on going first, but even if you don't, having a Proteus Kill Team that's hidden, so not likely to take a lot of firepower, which is then able to strike in your turn 1, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. Expensive in points, oh yes. That is 500 points for that one tactic, but it could work, just not in smaller lists. So let's think about 1000-point lists, and I want to be lore thematic and do a watch company. In the background, a watch company is 4 kill teams worth of Marines, led by a watch captain. I've picked the Gladius task force because the intercessors can sticky the home objective, and then along with the heavy intercessors, they can advance and shoot anyway in the first turn, even if you don't use the Devastator Doctrine because they have fire selector buttons on their weapons. The heavy intercessors get to the mid-board objective and then they can prove very tough to shift. All of the other units can benefit from the Devastator Doctrine as they can advance and still shoot. We are a short-range army. This lets us move up quickly and still shoot. In the second turn, the Proteus Kill Team and the Deathwatch Kill Team can advance and charge. That's very valuable. And then we have for turn 3, the Tactical Doctrine, so we can fall back and shoot and charge. Never underestimate the ability to do that. It not only means you get an extra round of shooting with all the guns in the unit that fell back, it means that all of your other units can now shoot the enemy because there is no longer a unit in combat with them. And when you charge back in, you get to fight first, which you otherwise would not have done. At 1000 points, the bike teams are there to complete objectives, not just holding primary objectives, which they can do, but also getting to different table quarters and completing the secondary objectives like cleanse. So this is a functional but also thematic army. You can think of the intercessors and heavy intercessors as collectively being one kill team. The 10 Proteus Kill Team members are a kill team. The 10 members of the Veteran Kill Team are obviously a kill team. We have the watch captain to lead them. And the 2 bike squads can be combined to think of as, yeah, that's a kill team, so it's a lore thematic army. If you wanted, and you have the new Leviathan box set, you could swap out the 2 Deathwatch Veteran biker squads with 10 Infernus Marines. They really like being able to advance and shoot, and just their existence with that number of torrent weapons, either in 2 squads of 5 or a unit of 10, means that you will deny enemy deep strike just by existing. No one wants to be hit by that much Overwatch. But that may come down to personal preference, whether you want to go more Primaris or more Firstborn style, and if you think the Infernus Marines will still be happy to be completing actions and objectives. This should still feel like a Deathwatch army. There are stratagems in the Gladius task force that work much like the Deathwatch stratagems and tactics. So even though we're not using special ammunition, you can justify it that you are in your head. Storm of Fire is a lot like the Dragonfire bolts. Now at this point I haven't yet got enough models to play a 2000 point game, the highest I've done is 1500, so I can't really suggest a 2000 point army accurately. I don't much like giving advice or army lists when I don't fully know what I'm talking about. I know other people on YouTube do and talk about like every army, but then they'll end up getting things very wrong. But from playing up to 1500 points, a 2000 point list would look something like this. Well, there you go. But that isn't even what my army list looks like. Because I am not making an army that is ready for tournament victory. I am making an army that I think is probably going to be compatible with whatever rules Games Workshop pulls out for later in 10th edition and 11th edition, even if it has to include a Space Wolf. It's a mix of all the models I wanted and a bunch of bits left over. With shields in the Deathwatch Veterans kit, you can make Blade Guard. You can use the sniper-looking bolt guns to make Eliminators. You can then switch these models back into kill teams if the rules change and they become better. If you're able to pick up a free Space Marine model of the month, or a free painting model, then you have enough arms and heads left over from the Deathwatch Veteran box to make a whole new person. That is how I got an Apothecary, and I use all of the tactics and the unit selection as mentioned in this video. We have to use everything at our disposal. Like, Kill Team Cassius has what I think is a pretty obvious mistake, where some of the models have close combat weapons, some of them have long vigil melee weapons, but the profiles are exactly the same. So you can have a person with a combi melter and a power sword in Kill Team Cassius. Until Games Workshop fixes something like that, we need to make the most of it. Do your best with exploits, but make an army you want and you think is cool and fun to enjoy in casual games of 40k with your friends. That is how you play Deathwatch in 10th edition.